Good morning, everyone. My name is Asher Noble, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to my TED Talk. Today, I would like to share with you a story about how a simple idea turned into a powerful movement for change. It's a story about turning trash into treasure, and it all starts with plastic bottles and cans. Plastic bottles and cans, collectively known as drink containers, are the most commonly littered item in Australia. This is due to their disposable nature, as they are often purchased as single-serve, on-the-go beverages and are discarded once consumed. To incentivize recycling of these containers, the Return and Earn scheme was introduced, offering 10 cents in exchange for each container by their readily available reverse vending machines. 10 cents. What a measly amount, you might say. And yes, 10 cents isn't worth travelling far for. But what if I were to tell you that a small school with only 300 students throws away 10,000 of these drink containers on an annual basis? That, I think you might agree, is worth travelling for. My fellow green entrepreneurs and I first came across this statistic when we were conducting our waste audit towards the end of last year. Whilst digging through rubbish, each 10-cent container felt like a nugget of gold. As a student pushing for sustainable change within our institution, I was compelled to realise the value of these containers. Through some of my previous research related to these containers, I'd seen their real potential as a fundraising tool. Whilst I'm determined to spend not a single dollar on my project, I could not possibly be opposed to money coming in, and seemingly, nor could my peers. The thing is, our $1,000 jackpot, divided up amongst 300 students, comes to a total of less than $4 per student per year. Once again, far less than is worth travelling for. $1,000 as a whole isn't an insignificant amount of money though. I can picture that money being used to build a chicken coop or a pizza oven. And as it turns out, a united cause such as pizza is exactly what we as a cohort need to utilise this lucrative expended resource. Without a specific united cause in mind, but inspired by the idea of working together to achieve a collective goal, I created Quench for Cash, which I'll get back to in a minute. After completing the audit, I released what was supposed to be a jarring survey, displaying the results of our investigation and prompting my peers to give their thoughts. Whilst basically every surveyed student identified as not in favour of the vast majority of our waste heading to landfill, and believed that we should be exchanging of these containers to fund student-determined causes, only 25% of students said they would actively participate in waste reduction initiatives. The irony is blatantly clear. A collective view that we should be recycling these containers, that it should be someone else's responsibility. I think the problem here lies with our idea of what participating in waste reduction initiatives looks like. I think this statement conjures up imagery of having to dig through rubbish and work tirelessly to convince one's own peers to separate their waste before disposing of it in the correct bin. However, this is not my idea of participating in waste reduction initiatives. In my mind, participation is nothing more than the simple task of taking responsibility for one's own waste. On an individual scale, you can hardly even call this work, or participation as we seem to think of it. But when pro-social behaviours are adopted on an institutional scale, that is when big results are yielded. Quench for Cash is my manifestation of this idea, a competition fundraiser where each of the 10 big picture advisories competes with one another over a designated period of time to see who can collect the most drink containers. The incentive is that the winning advisory gets to work together as a team to decide where all of the money collected goes. Using data from the audit, it was not difficult to calculate that over a 5-week period of time, Quench for Cash would raise just about $50. It's not a lot of money, is it? However, this is potentially variable to two factors. One, being student participation rates, which as we've seen could be as low as 25%, and two, being the potential for participants to bring in containers from external sources, which could greatly counteract the first factor. So, with these numbers in mind, Quench for Cash was positioned on a thin line between failure due to lack of participation and great success in the case of widespread adoption and containers being brought in from external sources. After giving each of the 10 big picture advisories their designated cardboard box collection bin and explaining to them the concept of the competition, it was go time. The first day went about as expected. Some advisories with 0, some with 3, and my own advisory, of course, with about 10. It was shortly after this point that I realised I couldn't be an active participant in the competition. By considering I was already having to touch everyone's grubby containers, I couldn't stop myself from collecting extra containers from the bins around the school. This amounted to about $1 to $2 a day that I just set aside into a bonus tally for the time being. I'll get back to this later. Once again, it was a slow beginning for Quench for Cash, with the first couple of days only raising $1 or $2 at most. I think this is partly due to the fact that we as a cohort hadn't quite developed the habit of using the collection bins yet. I also found it quite hard early on to disseminate information as to what the competition was. With some containers in hand that I just collected from the bins around the school, I came up with an engagement tactic. I went to a few of the advisories and posed a question to the students as to what they would do if they had $100 to put towards a good cause. This allowed for further discussion to be had as to what Quench for Cash was and how they could participate. I continued using engagement tactics such as these throughout what was now becoming a routine post-lunch collection. By the end of the first week, I saw my engagement tactics start to pay off. I saw a real spike in the number of containers collected, from no more than $1 to $2 a day to $5. I was elated. I was truly overcome with joy. And I'm serious, I really was just overwhelmingly, borderline satirically overcome with joy, to the point where it became quite entertaining for my peers. The word was starting to get out about Quench for Cash, and I had several teachers and students come forward and tell me that they would volunteer their personal bottle and can stash from home to the initiative. I saw the first real example of someone pitching in a large quantity of containers early on in the second week, when a teacher brought in 100 containers and distributed them amongst 3 of the advisories. It was starting to become comical. At the end of the day, as everyone is leaving, I'll be doing just the same thing, except with a duffel bag, clearly stuffed to the brim with bottles and cans, clunking along beside me. At this point, it was starting to become stressful when it came to me getting on the bus with this container kerfuffle. I feared rejection from getting onto the bus, albeit I was keeping my container kerfuffle fairly contained to my seat on what is often not a very full bus. Still, my theatrics were potentially losing their entertainment value when the audience was the general public. Towards the end of the third week, I had an aha moment. Inspired by a swimming fundraiser I was participating in, I decided to run a double points day. For each container and advisory collected on this day, an extra container would be added to their tally. The source of these extra containers would be the bonus tally I spoke about earlier. This initiative was truly bringing me an immense amount of satisfaction, as it truly was the manifestation of what I had wanted to achieve for a long time. However, detouring to the reverse vending machine, located in Warrawong on a daily basis in the Aussie summer heat, was really starting to stretch me thin. Although I committed to taking full responsibility of the container exchanging myself, it was still affecting my ability to work and think clearly in the classroom, having all these numbers and grubbiness clouding my brain. And speaking of grubbiness, I was having to touch everyone's rubbish. That part of it wasn't exactly too satisfying. On Tuesday of the third week, I clunked from school to the bus stop with my sack bulging full with nearly 200 bottles and cans. Before getting on the bus, as was eventually going to happen, the bus driver informed me that he would no longer be able to let me on the bus with my container kerfuffle. After finally performing my routine exchangement, still with a bajillion numbers and thoughts running through my head, I had a moment of clarity and realised that this was a sign that my proven successful initiative had just about run its course. Whilst it was difficult for me to part ways with Quench for cash, I knew that it was best to end on a spark rather than to fizzle out. I decided to announce the final day of Quench for cash at the upcoming Big Picture Assembly. And to celebrate our collective achievement, it was to be a double points day. After the final day was over, I updated the leaderboard one last time, displaying that in just 3 weeks and 1 day, we had raised $110.40. Quench for Cash has proven to ourselves the real power for change we have when we work together. What started as a simple initiative to recycle bottles and cans has turned into a community-driven movement, highlighting the transformative effect of small individual efforts. Each individual student's participation and each container collected has contributed to a larger narrative of sustainability at Five Islands Secondary College. Moreover, my experience with overwhelming, borderline satirical joy, feeling and looking like a grub, and inconveniencing a local bus company has reminded me of the importance of being respectful of other people's space, a principle that extends beyond physical spaces to encompass our environment and community. It underscores the idea that true sustainable initiatives aren't just about individual actions, but about the effect of our actions on others. As we reflect on Quench for Cash, let us remember that waste reduction initiatives aren't just about recycling. It's about fostering a culture of mindfulness and responsibility. It's about recognizing that our small individual efforts can lead to significant change. So, let's continue to think beyond ourselves and take action for a more sustainable future. Thank you.